It's UPB here from OptionMillionaires.com. It's the day after the 4th of July, which would make today. All right, I'll let you know. It's the 5th of July. It's a Thursday. Markets were down, save for the NASDAQ, which had some flat, a little bit of upside today. And options. Some option contracts just went ballistic today. I'll cover those in a little bit. For those of you who are new to stock options, don't know what they are, I do run classes all the time. Get your feet wet, open a paper trading account, figure it out, because the potential there for trading stock options to make money is big. And that's why we trade stock options. The other thing about stock options is there's plenty of opportunity there to do all different types of trades. For instance, if a stock's just going to trade flat, you can actually sell options. Make money by selling the options to somebody else. But of course, there's a lot of risk that comes with that. You could also buy an option and finance some of that option trade by selling another option farther out. That's thereby reducing your maximum profit potential, but also minimizing your expenditure on that option contract. We have plenty of classes at OptionMillionaires.com that explain that. Options aren't that confusing, but a lot of people liken stock options to going to a casino and seeing everyone cheering at the craps table. And while stock options, playing out of the money at stock options, people relate to gambling. And it is a lot of gambling. If you're trading far out of the money options, there's also plenty of strategies out there that can net you a serious income if you do understand stock options. So let's get into today's action. Today, the SPY is still above my 136.13 around there. That would be now the support line. We came right around to it this morning. Boom, we bounced and then faded later in the session. I am still a bull here, and just pull back a little bit. What I would like to see, this is what I'd like to see to really feel comfortable about getting a little more bullish as far as my trading, getting into more calls. Right now, what we're looking at, if we decline here below the 136 mark on the SPY, 136.13 around there, I would look for a resumption of the decline that we've seen the last couple months. However, if we continue upside, I would like to see a break here. 140 on the SPY. That would get me a little more confident about seeing new highs for the year. Oh, I'm crazy, aren't I? New highs for the year? No QE announced? How are we going to do that? Well, exactly. Nobody's going to expect it. Expect the unexpected. So yeah, right up there. It's a lot more room to go, which is why I'm positioned for calls. Whatever I'm buying, I am buying calls. When we break below 136, and I have some lines in the sand for other individual stocks. Then I'll be looking for puts. But we'll see. It's been a nice move off the lows back in early June. And as I've been saying for months, many months, moons, years, central banks will not let this house of cards collapse. So they might let it pull back so that they can institute more of their policy. But for now, let's just play the cards that we are dealt, which is more upside, I believe, until we break 136 on the SPY. That would be the support, 136.13. So let's go into it. One trade I made today, one option contract I purchased, the SPY, not the SPY, I'm sorry, Goldman Sachs, $100 calls. I got them at 40 cents. That's for next week. I got them last week at this exact time, just about, and exact time, just about. That doesn't really, that's like oil and vinegar. I got them last week, let's just put it at 6 cents. They went to 36 cents yesterday on the Goldman Sachs. $100 calls. Goldman Sachs today fell almost 3%, closing just around the lows of the day. I think Goldman Sachs is heading back up over $100. Had a nice double bottom from the start of June to the end of June. Double bottom. Now in a nice channel. And I do think we're going to break out of it to the upside. Heading over $100 next week to $103.25, ultimately $106 and change before I'll start thinking about maybe getting puts, or we'll see where we are at that exact point. Point being, let me say point twice, yes. Trying to make my point. I do like the risk reward here on the Goldman Sachs $100 calls. At 40 cents, I believe they close at 30 cents. So my purchase, I'm already down money on it, but I'm willing to ride it out because, as I always say, I don't load the boat, and that takes a lot of the emotion out of it. If you're loading up and you got a lot of money in an option contract and you start losing money, you're likely going to sell out of that to save, what money you have left, which is why there's really no need for it. Now, the trade I'm looking for, and the reason I got into Goldman Sachs calls, is because I think Goldman Sachs, if it goes over $100, it goes to 103. Those 40-cent calls will be $3. Point being, that'll be 400 into 3 grand, which kind of proves my point. You don't need to put all that money to work. The less money you have, the less apt you will be to sell out of that position. And if you get into a position like I'm in the Goldman Sachs calls because I believe it, I look at the chart, I look at everything, and I just believe the stock's going to go higher, then I'm not going to be shaken out of that trade as easily as somebody who, say, backed up the truck and is loading thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of calls. So there you go. That's my Goldman Sachs. Let's go into some trades today. Jimmy Bob had Netflix at the open. Before the open, in the chat room, he was talking about Netflix. He said, Netflix, 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 volume, volume, volume. This is before the open. And then after the open, you guys can look. I believe he even posted his trade on StockTwits. Go to stocktwits.com/optionmillionaires. You'll see Jimmy Bob at about 9:30, 9:33 or something, posted his opening trade, 20 cents for the $80 Netflix calls. I believe the low on those were 8 cents. And just zoom in on the daily chart for Netflix. Netflix was like a, usually I like to say 5 Viagra spike. It was more like a 7 to 8 Viagra spike this morning from 75, just enormous. I mean, the guy's calling for $80 calls when the stock's at $74 and they expire tomorrow. You need the stock to move 10% in a day. It didn't just move 10%. It moved 13, almost 14%, 13.5% today. That's what it closed at. Up 13.44%, up almost $10. Whew, unbelievable. And that's why we trade stock options. And Jimmy Bob is just one of the best. He's got a lot of stocks he watches. He notices the volume. He's got a good eye, good feel for when stocks are going to post a big move. And so if you can look, he posted the $80 calls at 20 cents, and they just today. And they ultimately went to $3.46. To put that into perspective, if you bought 10 of them at 20 cents, I believe he had an order in to get 50. And like I said, me and Jimmy Bob, we don't trade exactly the same. We have different philosophies, but ultimately profitable ones. He put in an order for 50, I believe, at 20 cents. He got filled for like 11. So he only got $220 worth. And at the high, those were worth over $3,600. From $220 in the morning to it's mind-boggling. And that's why we love stock options. That's why we trade stock options, folks. And that's what we give you at optionmillionaires.com. And Jimmy Bob was not the only one. He was talking about a pre-market. He was talking about his trade. And there was many in the chat room who got into that trade. And some of them, disappointingly, got out a little sooner. Some of them they got in at 30, 40 cents. They got out at $1.70, $1.60. Much like my Baidu call this time last week when I got in at 37 cents. The next day I got out at $1.50. They went to $5 that same day. And a lot of people were in that trade too. So that's what stock options is all about. Now, if you saw the Netflix move coming, or you were just playing Netflix for a big move, and we know Netflix has always been capable of just these big moves. These Netflix $75 calls, you're not even talking to 80s. The $75 calls just a couple days ago on Monday were 2 cents. 2 cents. Let me repeat that one more time. 2 cents. You could have bought 10 of them. They would have cost you $20 for the $75 calls. And what did they go to today? $7.70. 2 cents to $7.70. One more time. 2 cents. All right, forget that. Point being, that's $200. That's $20 into $7,700 on the Netflix $75 calls. That is amazing. Wild, crazy. The $80 calls were actually bidless for most of the week. On the 28th, there were 3 cents. Point being, nobody wanted to buy them. And suddenly today they're worth $3.46 at the high, from 3 cents to 300. So $30 into $3,460. I mean, either way, you could have probably gotten them for a penny. Just amazing. And that's why we trade stock options. And that's why I trade pretty far out of the money option contracts. And if you have the foresight to catch these moves before they happen, you see a stock like Netflix that we know has moved higher in the past. Let's go back a little farther, and we can see the kind of moves that Netflix has made. And we do have this big gap down here from the hundreds. I mean, could you imagine? Netflix goes up another 10% tomorrow. Anything is possible. Gotta love stock options. Let's move to Apple. Apple has had some great moves the last couple days. And if you do the think back on Apple, the 610 calls were at 9 cents today. They went to $6.40. $6.40. Just amazing. Amazing. And all right, well, I think that's going to wrap it up. I'm trying to pull up my chart of Apple. For some reason, she's not listening to me. What else is new? Maybe she should do oh gosh, I'm going to get myself in trouble. All right, this is UPB here from OptionMillionaires.com. Thanks for tuning in. That's a quick market update. I'm going to have some option trades for you tomorrow. Weekly options expire. It's going to be a fabulous day. I can feel it already. Goodbye.